Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, pod with me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our sixth episode of Fire Pod with me, our Twin Peaks podcast. My name's Vinny, and with me, as always, my friend Steven. Say hi.
Hello.
Today, we will be discussing part 14 of The Return of Twin Peaks. Spoilers, if you have not seen this episode or any of the prior episodes, we will be talking spoilers, dude.
Indeed. Well, I should ask, what'd you think of this episode overall? Were you a fan?
I liked the episode a lot. We were in Twin Peaks a little bit more this episode than we have been for the majority of the series, which felt nice. It was a good it felt more like Twin Peaks, I guess. It's a weird thing to say that we've been watching Twin Peaks for 14 episodes, and this episode might have felt the most like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It definitely moved the plot forward, which is like kind of what we've all been anticipating and wanting, but
right,
it's a slow burn, but we're finally there's definitely some payoff and reward in this episode for sure. So it was definitely one of my favorites. But so the episode starts off, we're in Buckhorn, South Dakota.
Buckhorn. South Dakota.
Our boy Gordon calls Lucy back in Twin Peaks.
That you, Lucy? The podcast is just me doing a bad Gordon Cole impression.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Their exchange where she's like, well, he asks if you ever left Twin Peaks.
Yeah. You been there all these years, Lucy?
Like, no, we went on vacation. And she says like one place.
Bora Bora.
Bora
One year
Bora.
they went to Bora Bora, dude.
Too good.
I would love to go to Bora Bora.
Can I come with her?
I mean, sure.
All right. That's cool. So he has to speak to Truman, not knowing that he's going to be speaking with Frank instead of Harry, right?
Harry. Yep. That seems to be everyone's issue. So
Yeah.
we can probably assume that Frank has relatively recently took over the sheriff's position.
Yeah, do you think he just like... Yeah, what do you think Frank's backstory is? Do you think...
Do you want to hear a real shitty fan theory
Yes.
that I just came up with? And I apologize if someone else came up with this and doesn't think it's shitty and they're listening. What if Frank Truman was manufactured the way that Dougie was?
Come on. That's brilliant. Are you serious, dude? It all makes sense.
Just saying, what's his backstory? We don't know it.
Exactly.
Haha. We didn't
No,
see we didn't see him in the original series. Haha.
That's right.
Although Robert Forster,
Yeah.
he was originally going to play Harry Truman, but he wasn't available to film the pilot, so they got Michael Onkine, and they just kept him obviously for the rest of the show.
I did not know that.
Fun fact.
Man, that's crazy to think about what that show would have been like without him, without Harry. Different, alt
or
Harry.
with a different Harry at least. Yeah.
Getting back on track.
Gordon is returning a phone call for Sheriff Truman, and he thinks he's going to be talking to Harry, but it's Frank, and he's like, "What do you got for me?" And so,
yeah, that's right. He tells him Hawk found Laura's 2 missing pages from her diary,
yeah,
and the possibility that there might be 2 Coopers.
yep.
So,
And Gordon responds with, "I cannot comment on this information, but I really appreciate it."
that's right. This episode just hit me over the head with so much that even that's hard to remember.
Oh yeah.
All right, so yeah, they have that exchange, and Albert, yeah, now we're back. I think they're in the same room, but Albert's telling Tammy about the first Blue Rose case, which was a murder in Olympia in 1975, I believe. And basically, the case that they're describing is that there was a murder, or I think there were two people died technically in a hotel room. And if I'm not mistaken, a woman there killed her doppelganger. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Woman named Lois Duffy.
Yeah. And before she disappears, she says, before the doppelganger disappears, the other one that she shot, is that right? She says, I'm like the Blue Rose. And she disappears, and her, essentially she didn't have a twin. And the one who she shot, her doppelganger, she hung herself in jail, right? And then there was another woman that lied there dying. And the two arresting officers were Philip Jeffries and Gordon Cole. And so that's what started the whole Blue Rose case. And Albert asked Tammy, what's the significance? And what does she say, Vin?
She says, well, the blue rose isn't natural, doesn't grow in the wild. And so it's a tulpa, is what she said. It's like it's manufactured, or a tulpa.
That's right. Tammy, one smart cookie.
Yeah. Secret History of Twin Peaks, that's she's annotating the whole thing, so.
Right. Yeah, how far are you into that, by the way?
Not very.
Yeah.
we started it, and then we've just been pretty busy the past few weeks, so we're not super far into it yet, but
yeah. No, I'm excited to read up on that because I didn't know how important she was to the story.
Right. And I'm safely assuming it's her because it's TP, Agent TP, and it's a female that's I have the audiobook and the book, and so it's a female that's reading it, so I'm just assuming it's Tammy Preston. But
right.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's pretty neat. I'm excited to read more, and I think once we're done with the show here, we should probably do an episode on that, and then the final dossier once that's out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we could even do a couple on that. I'd be down. So yeah, they have that exchange, and then Diane comes into the room, which this scene just blew my mind.
Oh yeah.
Like I was just sitting on the couch, like yelling, like no. So yeah, Diane comes in, and Gordon asks her if that last night she had with Coop, if he had mentioned Major Briggs. At first she's like evasive. She's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then she says yes. And then they ask her about the ring that was found in Briggs' stomach, and that we all know is Dougie's ring that was inscribed to him by Janie E. And they ask her if that has any significance to her, and she says Janie E. is her estranged half-sister. Did you see that coming at all?
No. No way did I see that coming.
It's so, it's one of those things where, we've been talking this whole time, how are these stories going to connect? And we've been getting it in small little, I don't know, little teases of, how this could all connect, but it seems like Diane is the key. She is the key between Gordon and Albert and Evil Coop and Dougie and Janie E. So
when it happened, it was like my brain just woke up, dude.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah, because then it just makes you question how what is Diane's true and what are her true intentions? Because it's all got to be significant as to why Dougie exists and is with Janie E. And so I don't know. But that's the thing. Okay, let's talk about this. She has to know that Dougie is a version of Coop, right?
That's assuming she's seen a picture. She's been estranged, and she hasn't talked to her in years.
That's true.
So
because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they got married in like 97. I have that number in my head, but I don't know.
Well,
if
that's
right.
the first year that the Fusco brothers were able to find information on Dougie Jones.
Oh,
was
right,
in
right.
1997. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was the year they got married or
Yeah.
what kind of information that was.
Right. Well, I mean, assuming that, they had Sonny Jim after they were married,
Right.
you know.
Well, yeah, if Sonny Jim is about 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Well, we probably put him at like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
would you
I'd say
say?
8 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they must either be really estranged or she knows what's going on. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. She's very good at being just like, I mean, obviously she's super cold and doesn't let anyone in, so it's hard to read her.
Right.
But I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards her knowing a little bit more than she's leading on
Right.
about grand scheme, what's going on. So yeah, then immediately Gordon calls Vegas PD or the FBI.
It's the FBI office in Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. And says, I need you to get a Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Jones and bring them in. Consider them like armed and dangerous.
Yeah.
And then Gordon hangs up, and the guy on the phone's like, there's like, ooh, what Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Jones? There's
Yeah, he's like, there's like 23 in the greater Las Vegas area. and the other agent is all like, how are we going to know which one is the one we need? and the FBI, the head FBI guy there, slams his hand on the desk and goes, Wilson, how many times have I told you this is what we do in the FBI? And we cut back.
But is it safe to say that was your favorite moment?
I watched it a couple of times. I thought it was pretty good. But I read some people saying that like his movements were odd. They almost seemed like they were reversed. So I might need to look back on that scene again and see if something fishy was going on. But who knows at this point? What's fishy and what's not?
Right. I noticed that too. I thought his mannerisms were weird, but a lot of times, like, I feel like Lynch just uses very unique editing techniques, like, and so it could have just been that. I don't know if it's necessarily significant to the story, but yeah, I did notice that too. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? But you never know. So now we're back in. We go back to Buckhorn, and Gordon's explaining a dream that he had.
Yes, another Monica Bellucci dream.
Right. Yeah, and he's describing it's at a cafe in France, and he's talking with her, and Cooper's there, but he can't see his face.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him, we are like the dreamer that dreams and lives inside the dreams. And then he like nods at her and says, that makes sense. And then she says, but who is the dreamer? And then he got this like extreme discomfort, right? Is that how he described it?
Mm-hmm.
And she like was looking behind him and kind of indicating that he needs to turn around and see what's behind him, and he looks and sees a younger version of himself, which we know as the one of the opening scenes in Fire Walk with Me, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the scene with Philip Jeffries and the potentially two Coopers.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on this?
I think that somehow Doppelkoop has gone back in time, because we know from Fire Walk with Me that, well, from Missing Pieces actually, that somehow when Philip Jeffries went through whatever he did with the Black Lodge or whatever was going on with him, he traveled through time, because he's talking to Gordon, and he's like got his head on the table, and he looks up and he sees the calendar and he goes 1989, and he gets real confused because that wasn't the time that he thought it was. So
Right.
And then he gets out of there, and we never see or hear from Philip Jeffries again. But somehow Cooper had to have done the same thing, and not the good Cooper, but the bad Cooper. And somebody had pointed out the image of Cooper looking at the security camera in the last episode of Booper, I should say, Scale Cooper.
Yeah.
Looking at the security camera at the end of, or not at the end of, but in the last episode when he went to the farm and fucked with Renzo. It was similar to when Fire Walk with Me, when Philip Jeffries goes through the hallway and we see Cooper staring into the security camera.
Yeah. And yeah, no. Like, you look at those two scenes like side by side, and they're very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously, like, Philip like points at Coop and says to Gordon, "Who do you think that is?"
Yeah.
Just, there's something about that that's very chilling.
It is.
And
half of which it being Bowie saying those words.
Right. And you know, there's a deleted scene where like Diane's unseen, but like Cooper's like flirting with her.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know. I have to watch that again because that, like, I mean, it was cut from the film,
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem kind of out of character for Coop. So, but I wonder if that's significant, if this is, you know, the second Coop.
Right. I wish I could have seen the full Missing Pieces. I've only seen bits and pieces of the Missing Pieces. I'm waiting for the Criterion Collection release.
Right.
Coming up here soon.
Yeah, let's just say to anyone that's trying to find Missing Pieces to watch online, just buy the physical, because I spent hours trying to find it. To even if I wanted to rent it on iTunes or anything like that, you can't do it. You gotta buy the physical. So
right. and the
save yourself some time.
And the Criterion Collection is going to be the easiest way to buy it, because the only other option is buying the full series with Fire Walk with Me and the Missing Pieces, which is going to cost you a little bit more. So
right. And I think Hulu streams a lot of the Criterion Collection stuff, so it might eventually end up on there.
Right.
So you might have to wait it out, but yeah, that's what we'd recommend. Anyway, so yeah, that kind of ends the dream sequence. And I will say though, Gordon describing the dream is very like. There's a consistent theme in this episode of people describing dreams or dream-like sequences that they experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like the first of, I would say, about 3. And it's really bizarre. But that's what Twin Peaks is. Anyway, we're back in Twin Peaks, and they arrest bitch-ass Chad.
Yeah. Fuck Chad.
Fuck Chad. We've been wanting this for a while now. And, Frank Truman says that they've been watching Chad for months. They know what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they got the letter from Miriam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's the end of Chad. They arrest him, and they take him downstairs to one of the cells where we've seen Ben locked up.
Yep. That's a good point. I didn't even think of that connection of we also saw Bobby and James and Mike down there.
Yeah. Very old school.
Yeah.
So yeah, they arrest Chad, and it's good timing that they put him in there, because now Bobby, Hawk, Andy, and Truman are going to Jack Rabbit's palace.
Mm-hmm.
It is time, and boy, oh boy, does it get weird. I wanted to ask you this. So they go out into the woods, right? And they see Jack Rabbit's palace, which is like a tree stump.
Yeah.
And the shape of it, this might be me. This is probably me overanalyzing and trying to find connections where there's not. But the tree stump almost The shape of it kind of looks like the thing that Coop crawls out of into space, like the box type shape.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm sure that that's not anything, but I was like, huh. Because I saw that, and that kind of like, the only reason why I say that is because I saw that, and I was like, could that be? And then what followed, I was like, oh, that would maybe make sense, but probably not. Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it as like a throne for, Jackrabbit's palace.
Yeah, I could see that too, for sure. Yeah, so we see that, and I want to ask you about this, because I think I missed some of the dialogue here. Once they get to Jackrabbit's palace, they all put dirt in their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
What is the significance of that? Why did they do that?
In Major Briggs's note, he told them to do that.
He told them to?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, they all put dirt in their pockets, and they start walking further into the woods, and it gets, oh man, you just know something's coming because it just gets real ominous, and all of a sudden,
even before they walk into Jackrabbit's palace, you hear the electricity cracking, and
right, yeah, spooky. Once they started approaching, what did you expect? What did you think was going to happen?
Jackrabbit's palace or the sycamore trees?
I guess the sycamore trees. Like once they started approaching, like once they, it starts getting spooky and like right before they see the smoke. Like what did you think was going to happen?
Well, I was afraid that a woodsman was going to appear rather than who does appear, and I thought that woodsman was going to maybe slaughter one of our boys, but luckily that didn't happen.
That's interesting that you say that because that brings me to a point where I had that feeling too towards the end of that that we'll explain, but towards the end of what happens there, I was like, man, one of these characters might die.
Mm-hmm.
But then I go back and I think, and when it comes to the original Twin Peaks run, it was very rare that characters died.
Yep.
I think that's just something that come with modern television. Like,
yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, I think Breaking Bad in particular has kind of like ruined that for me. Like, I always assume characters are going to die now. Same with like, if anyone's ever watched Sons of Anarchy, it's not my favorite show ever. I ended up watching it because my brother loved it. But characters, like significant characters, would just die all the time. And obviously Game of Thrones too.
And Walking Dead.
Yeah, like important characters just die all the time. So I think modern television has just made us kind of cynical. Like, oh, he's going to die. Everyone's going to die now.
We all die eventually. We're all gonna die.
Yep. That's it. You nailed it. So anyway, they walk in and some spooky smoke appears on the ground, and they see this like, how would you describe that? Like the shining like circle object that's on the ground.
Well, that's a good question. It's almost like a little bit of a well made, like a natural well. I believe in the original series, it was that was like where the burnt oil smell would kind of originate from.
That's what when I first saw it, I was like, that's like, yeah, like the Black Lodge portal. Like that's where the entrance is, or at least not like the overall landscape, but that in particular, that object. I was like, that's if not the exact same, very similar. So that's what I thought was about to happen. I'm like, uh-oh. How can all four of them go to the Black Lodge right now? That would be way too much. So anyway, a blind woman, or the blind woman, I should say.
Nido.
Is that her name?
Yeah, that's what she's credited as.
Okay. And we know her from episode 3 when Coop is leaving the Black Lodge and he goes through what I've called the purgatory type zone, the Red Room, as others have called it. The one who kind of guides him on how to get out. So I think we know her to be a good character. Would you agree?
Yeah. I would say it's safe to say that she's a good character.
Yeah. So anyway, we see her on the ground, and Andy goes down just to check on her to make sure she's okay. She's laying there naked, and he holds her hand, and they all kind of look up, and a portal opens up in the sky, which is the same sort of portal that Gordon saw and almost embraced and went into when our boy, the Shaggy Principal's head explodes at the abandoned house where they kind of went into the zone, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they see that. All of a sudden, Andy like poof disappears, and he goes into the portal, which was a very funny transition to me because I thought we were gonna see like the scene in Space Jam where Michael Jordan goes through the golf course,
like the whoa, like the
Yeah.
stretch cartoony kind of thing.
I thought that's what was gonna happen to Andy. So for him to just poof disappear was pretty funny. Because no matter what, that edit, like it doesn't matter what like context it's used in, it's the funniest thing ever. Like for reference, that's oh man, the episode of Adventure Time with the Witch where she wants hair, and they have to go and like get hair from a princess, and then like Finn takes off his hat, and he has this beautiful long hair. And he's like, I can just give you my hair. And he's just smiling, and he has all this long, beautiful hair. And then without any sound effect, his hair just disappears and he's bald. And that's his way of giving her the hair. Anyway, any jump cut like that is the funniest thing ever to me. So that cracked me up. But anyway, yeah, Andy goes to what we assume is the White Lodge. What a character to relay very important information to, right?
Mm-hmm.
That cracked me up. He's there. He is greeted by the giant, who introduces himself as the Fireman.
Mm-hmm.
He puts an object in Andy's hands. It's this weird. How would you describe that object?
It almost looked like an incense burner of sorts, maybe.
Yeah. And some smoke appears from the top of it, which guides Andy to look up. And there's like a mirror type portal thing on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And that's used to show Andy some things, because apparently the Fireman, or the giant, is keen for dramatic ways of relaying information, because he could have just said to Andy, look up, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't have to do all that, but you know, he can be extra if he wants. He's the Fireman. So yeah, then we get basically Andy sees the events that happened in episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
He sees the woodsman. He's asked if he has a light. He sees the mother experiment.
Yep.
Puking out.
Bob and whatnot.
Yeah, all the evil. He sees Laura with 2 angels behind her, on each side, one on each side. He sees Scale Coop and Normal Coop kind of split, so
Yeah.
he sees that there's 2 Coopers.
That was a neat thing to look at. I don't know. I liked seeing them overlaying and then separating. I thought that was cool to look at.
No, it was for sure. He sees the naked blind woman. He also sees himself guiding Lucy somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And after second watch, I think that is, to me, what I saw is that was his way of guiding her in the following scene as to where they put the woman.
Yeah, I can see that.
Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Unless it is another scene later. But to me, that's what made sense. I'm not sure if that's right or not. And then he also sees the electric pole from Fire Walk with Me, and the same electric pole that we see after Richard hits the kid.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's hit with a lot of information, and then he looks back at the fireman, and the object disappears from his hand, and then soon enough, Andy also disappears, and he's back in the real world. And there was something about the way that they edited the Hawk and Truman and Bobby that looked very similar to kind of how the Woodsman moved.
Right.
where it was like that transparent like motion blur. So I don't know if that's significant at all, but they're back at the tree stump or Jack Rabbit's palace.
Yep.
Yeah, and they kind of look dazed, and then Andy appears holding the woman. What's her character's name again?
Nido.
Yeah, he appears holding Nido, and this is the most like serious and like sober-minded Andy we've ever seen. He's holding her, and he says, "We need to take this woman to a cell. People are trying to hurt her, and we can't tell. Like, she's fine physically, nothing's wrong with her, but we can't tell anyone about this." And they're all just like, "Okay." And no one else besides Andy remembers what just happened. I should say Hawk and Truman don't remember. Maybe Bobby does. We don't hear from him.
Yeah.
So anyway, before we move on from that, do you think the giant and the fireman are the same character?
I would assume so. Did he ever call himself anything in the original series?
That's interesting. I don't believe so. I think he's only credited as the giant, but I don't think he ever calls himself the giant.
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing with the Man from Another Place. How
he's technically the arm.
Yeah. I think it's kind of the same thing, and every time the giant has been credited so far, his name has been question marks.
Right.
So, I would assume it's probably the same character.
Yeah, I would say so. The only reason why I wanted to question that is just because, I mean, playing devil's advocate, everybody has a doppelganger.
Right.
That we know of. And so we never saw the giant's doppelganger. We did see him in another form as the old man. And obviously, just the location setting. We've only seen him in the White Lodge in this black and white setting. So I thought it was interesting to question, but I agree with you. I think they are the same character.
Yeah. What do you think Windom Earle's doppelganger would have been like?
Oh, man. Fucking Windom. We'll never know, because here's the thing about Windom. He got too power hungry.
And he got roasted. Like, literally.
He did. He got roasted. He thought that he could go to the Black Lodge and he would be running shit. And Bob's like, fuck no. Just because you're evil doesn't mean that you can do whatever the hell you want.
It almost felt like David Lynch just like coming back in and being like, fuck your bitch ass Windom Earle. Yeah. Sucking him up. Oh god, that was good.
I've never thought about that. I've never thought about it like that, but I agree for sure. Like, because he was not a fan of that like story arc at all, right?
Yeah.
So, oh man, I think in retrospect, and we can if we're ever gonna rewatch the series and talk about it here, I don't think in theory the Windom Earle storyline was bad. Like, the idea of it, another crime happening and them, but it just got so, all of his like extra costumes, and it just got so like silly that it was like, I can't really take this guy serious.
Oh no. He was always in disguise, and that's my favorite part about Windom Earle, but it was way too cartoonish and silly.
Right, because like Coop and everyone described him like Windom Earle's like a genius. He's a mastermind. and then we must fear him.
He's over there being all like, I'm gonna wear this top hat and glasses and the funny nose and mustache, and nobody's gonna know it's me.
Yeah.
Who would suspect the lowly librarian to be Windom Earle? Yeah.
Fucking Windom. And his name's Windom Earle.
Windom Earle, yeah. It's stupid.
So, we see Andy and Lucy putting, or like they have the woman Nido.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they put a robe on her and they take her into a cell, and Chad's like over there talking shit in a cell to Andy, and fucking Andy goes over and is like, Chad, you're a bad person. You put a bad name on good police officers.
Says what was on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
You're a bad person.
You're a bad person. You know, that's like my favorite insult you can tell someone. So like, and I always want to like you always want to express that to shitty characters. And so just be like, you're a bad person. Like you can't really respond to that. It's so good. And like Lucy's, I love whenever Andy does something that's like noble or dominant or something like that. He always gets this like reassurance from like Lucy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we got that here. I love that. So yeah, we have Naito in her cell, Chad in his, and a man that we don't really know what's wrong with him, if he's drunk. I think that's kind of the notion, is the man might be drunk, but he's he's bleeding profusely from his mouth and like his like cheek area.
Right.
And he's reiterating everything that's said. He's just echoing it. So, Naito, obviously, since she doesn't speak any sort of human language that we know of, is just making these kind of guttural, not really guttural, but these interesting sounds.
Yeah.
Almost like chirping.
Almost chimpanzee-like.
Yeah, like these chirping type of sounds. And so the other man that's in the cell is like repeating all of it, and then Chad's like yelling at him, and then the guy starts repeating whatever Chad's yelling at him. Just another classic Lynchian high noise. Yeah. Very annoying repeating noises, just you know, that create this discomfort. Anyway,
do you want to hear another shitty fan theory I have? It might not be shitty.
Let's hear it.
Is the guy that's bleeding from his face? Well, I've got two theories about this guy. We'll talk about the second one later. Is he like Dougie? Is he maybe like someone that is stuck, and because he's repeating everything that everyone's saying the way that Dougie does?
Wow.
So
I didn't think about it like that.
Is he maybe like a mind that is stuck in a body that he can't fully control?
Wow.
And that
very well could be.
That will actually play into my other theory as well once we get there. So
I could be wrong, but honestly, I don't think that's that shitty of a theory. I think there could be something with that.
Thanks, dude.
You got it. So yeah, moving on, we see a suited up in a security uniform James, right?
Sorry, I'm allergic to James Hurley. Sorry.
Woof. Woof.
Yeah.
So it seems that James is working as hotel security at the lodge, right?
At at the Great Northern, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's talking with another colleague, another security guard who's wearing a garden glove and crushing walnuts with just ease with the same hand that he's wearing the garden glove on. And James kind of asks him about like how he got here, right? He asks him why he won't take the glove off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this man is from England. England is my city.
Yeah. And no, he's not from Compton. Yeah,
do you want to kind of explain
his name is Freddie? Yeah. Well, before we talk about that, we should mention that James is like, we just got to check on the furnace, and then it's time to hit the roadhouse. And so him and Freddie go to the roadhouse pretty often, is what it sounds like. But Freddie says, you just want to see if Renee's there. So that girl that was crying during James's performance, I'm assuming is Renee, but Freddie also reveals that she's married.
Right.
And, classic James Hurley. He's always been cool.
He's always been cool. He's always been a ladies' man.
He's always
very
been
mysterious.
He's always been that lady's taken, but I'm going to take that lady's man.
Yeah, especially the when he goes to the house, remember? And he's working on the car.
Yeah.
And the lady's actually married to who he thinks is her brother.
Well, she's not married to him. Her brother, quote, is her side piece.
Oh, right, that's right.
Yeah. Malcolm was his name.
Good old Malcolm, dude.
Yeah. I work with somebody that looks just like Malcolm, and I hate it. And
Spooky.
that's why I remember the name Malcolm, because I'm like, ugh, I work with him.
Very spooky.
Anyway, got off track here. Freddy.
Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, that's essentially all they talk about with the Roadhouse is Ray's gonna be there. Freddy is from the East End in London, and he that glove on his hand, he tells James that he got it looked at by a doctor, and he can't take it off. It's part of his hand, and if you like try to remove it, he bleeds. So, it's James Hurley's birthday, and of course, on James Hurley's birthday, he's able to get you to tell him very private information, like,
Right.
of course.
Naturally.
Come on, it's my birthday. You're right, I gotta tell you now. So Freddy reveals to him that he's 23, and he was in England. He was drinking his life away, and one night he thinks, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing here? And he finds a stack of boxes in an alleyway, and naturally he says, I'm gonna jump into those boxes. So he does, and unknowingly gets sent to what we assume is the White Lodge, and speaks with the fireman. And he tells him that he needs to go to the hardware store that's near his apartment, or his flat, and there will be a package of gloves that is torn open and only has one glove in it, and that he needs to purchase that set of gloves that only has the one glove. And so he's like, all right. So he wakes up the next morning, and he goes and does that. And the guy, the Jobsworth that's ringing him up, says, I can't sell you those gloves. It's already open. I can't do that. And he essentially just says, fuck you, and buys some, leaves the money on the desk, and sprints out of the store with them. And what the giant had told him, or the fireman had told him, is that when he puts on that glove, he'll have the power of a bulldozer in his right hand. So he puts the glove on, and the guy from the store is chasing after him, and he socks him right in the jaw with the glove hand, and breaks his jaw. And when he does this, he remembers something else that the giant had told him. He said, go to Twin Peaks, Washington. You'll find your destiny there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to the airport, and he goes to buy a ticket, and they tell him he's already got one. So heads to Twin Peaks, and there he is now, 6 months later, working at the Great Northern.
Still waiting to find out what his destiny is.
Right.
Do you think, how did he get the ticket? Do you think somebody bought it for him that we're familiar with?
It could be something how, Mike has been doing stuff for Dougie Coop.
Right.
It could be something along the lines of that. Maybe the fireman, or maybe even Mike did that for him.
Right.
Because I mean, how else could you explain all the jackpots happening other than Mike somehow tampering with it?
Yeah, that's true. Man, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but if we believe all that to be true, which I agree with you, what do we think of Mike's character overall? Because I remember when we first watched the series, we didn't necessarily think Mike was a good character, but we thought that he was just trying to help
stop Bob.
Yeah, to stop Bob. He didn't really work off of any other merit but that.
Right.
Just to balance out what Bob did. So, what do you think now? Do you think that's still true, or do you think he might be in a newly formed, inherently good character?
I think that in stopping Bob, he stops all evil, I feel like, is what he believes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if his character has changed a whole lot more.
Yeah.
We've seen him doing more noble things in this series, definitely more than the original. But
that's true.
I can't really say either way.
And it should also like be taken into consideration that when we're first introduced to him, he's struggling with his own identity to begin with because he's half, what's his name, Gerard?
Philip Gerard's, yeah.
Yeah. So he like unless he has the drug, then he turns into Mike. So like him being like Weasley and like shit like that, like. I don't know. The thing that he did that was the most snakish though was he knew. We know this because of Fire Walk with Me that he knows that Leland. Yeah, spoilers. That Leland is Bob.
Right.
So he already knew that, but when Coop asks about it, he like doesn't tell him directly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thing. That was the biggest thing that made us question his character. But no, I agree. I think Mike's a huge driving force in guiding these characters. So
right.
I don't know.
Well, and maybe somehow the drug, because in Fire Walk with Me, he obviously yells at Leland, saying, "You ate all my cream corn."
Mm-hmm.
When we see him there, does he have both arms though? When we see him, or does he only have one arm? Because that could be a theory. Maybe that was before he chopped his arm off. But
oh right.
Perhaps the drug that Philip Gerard's was taking, maybe that fucked with Mike's memory, and he couldn't remember who Bob had inhabited.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good theory as well. Man. So no, I agree though. I think it probably was Mike that got him this ticket, but who knows? All we know is that boy. He's got a strong hand.
Oh yeah.
And so after they have that conversation, James goes into, or Jimmy as they're calling him now. Yeah. James is now Jimmy.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just what.
Yeah, it might just be Freddy's nickname for him.
Yeah. So he goes down into the furnace, and a very loud sort of electrical humming is heard down there. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to ask you about this. Do you think that's the same sound that Ben heard?
That was what I was going to ask you.
Okay, I do. I think I think that's what it is.
Right.
Because that would make sense for them to hear it, but not sure. Not be sure where it's coming from. If it's down in the furnace, who would suspect it to be down there?
Yeah.
And so we see. He goes down there. It's very ominous sounding. And very intense, and he goes down there and sees two dual doors.
Right.
2 doors side by side, and then that's where the scene cuts off.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What did you think about all that? What do you think the significance of it is?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I can't really say. I would assume that those doors have been open before. The Great Northern's been there for a long time. Mm-hmm. But maybe something is behind those doors that they haven't seen in years, or something was hidden down there that nobody's checked up on for a long time.
Yeah. Remind me again, and I apologize if my memory's failing me, that when we're first introduced to at like very, very early on in the original Twin Peaks, when I think Coop has a dream where he sees both Mike and Bob,
mm-hmm.
and Mike's kind of saying, he's telling him he cut his arm off. Is he in like a furnace type area?
So when Cooper's having that dream in, like, you're talking about like one of the first episodes of the original series.
Yeah, where Mike's like directly talking to like the camera or Coop.
So what that's taken from is when they filmed the pilot for Twin Peaks, they filmed it with 2 endings. One to be like a continuing story for a television series, and then the other ending was to wrap up the mystery and sell it as a movie for overseas. So in the ending for the overseas, it's essentially it ends with Mike calls Cooper and tells him to meet him back at the morgue at the hospital, and Mike's there, and he essentially the dream sequence that Cooper has in episode 3 of the original series.
Yeah.
All of those scenes were taken from the original ending of the pilot.
Got it.
So in that scene, Mike is in where Mike is he's in like one of the rooms of the morgue of the hospital. But when we see Bob, he's downstairs in like the basement or furnace area because.
So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of. Go ahead.
So basically in the ending of the TV movie version of the pilot, Mike explains, he cut off his arm to separate himself from evil, and he goes, Bob is here, like he is somewhere around here. So they look around and they look in the basement, and it's just like Bob's hanging out down there with like a bunch of candles like lit in a circle, like kind of an occulty thing.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, hey guys," and they're like, "Did you kill Laura Palmer?" He's like, "Yeah, and I'd do it again." And like he says all the creepy stuff that he says in the dream sequence, the "catch you in my death bag" kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as he's talking, he like kind of goes and he's like, "Mike, can you hear me?" And like Mike, just like he talks about killing again, and Mike just goes like hell and appears and just shoots Bob dead. And then the candles blow out, and Cooper says something like "wow," or like he says something ridiculous, and then it fades, and then it fades back in, and it says 25 years later, and it's old. It's the dream that Coop has with the man from another place, the Let's Rock, and that's how the made-for-TV movie ends, is with Laura Palmer whispering in his ear and the credits rolling.
That's crazy. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That goes to show how out of the loop I can be. That's crazy, man. So, I mean, with that, do you think that the furnace type area can be a portal?
Potentially, yeah. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
I mean, in the pilot, they're in the hospital rather than, the Great Northern.
Right. That's true. That's true.
I somehow think it's connected to Philip Jeffries. Whatever's going on at the Great Northern, I feel like it's connected to Philip Jeffries in some way, and I don't know why. It's just it's what my gut's telling me.
Man, I mean, it could be. The only thing that I know is that same sound, and I talked about this before, the same sound that they hear down in the furnace area is the same sound that the arm makes when he's like rubbing his hands together.
Right.
And again, like I've said before, that could just be the sound design in the show. It could be a similar, they just use similar stock sounds or whatever, or there's significance to that. So I don't necessarily know, but yeah, there obviously something's going on down there. But yeah, I mean, the reason why I say could it be a portal is for there to be two, dual doors side by side. And as we know from Twin Peaks, there's always the good and evil balance,
right?
The yin and yang to life. So who knows? Hopefully James doesn't get sucked in. It's too cool to go to the Black Lodge.
He goes into the Black Lodge, and then it says, like, 1 year later, everybody in the Black Lodge is wearing, like, sunglasses and leather jackets.
Oh, no, they're all singing his song with him. Nice kumbaya circle.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
James Hurley ends up saving the day.
Yeah. So, oh, man. And what a jump cut, because we see the two doors, and then it jumps to the Roadhouse like sign.
Well, it's not the Roadhouse. It's Elks Point number 5 bar, which is a
right. Yeah, not as classy. Kind of a.
Oh, this one's definitely a dive bar.
Yeah, definitely a dive bar. And yeah, so we see Sarah Palmer, Laura's mom, going to the bar. And as we've talked about in the last episode or the episode before, obviously the trauma of losing Laura and Leland has taken its toll on her over the years. She's drinking a lot. She's smoking a lot.
Right.
When we see her in her house, she's watching like TV that's on like it's on like a 10-second like glitch loop. It's of a boxing match. So something's just not right with her, and we don't know if it's just life has been pretty shitty to her, or if there's something else going on. We really don't know, because when Hawk goes to visit her to make sure everything's okay after the scene she created at the grocery store, he hears something in her house and like asks if everything's okay, and she's very like standoffish and doesn't want him to come inside. So we don't really know what's going on with her. So we see her at this bar just drinking by herself, drinking a Bloody Mary, and this trucker looking dude is sitting like kind of a few seats away, and then he goes up to her and like starts talking to her. And she's like, "Leave me alone." He's like, "That's not very nice." Just being like a typical
gross
like, scumbag, like being very forceful with getting, acting like she owes him this conversation and stuff. And he's I don't know if I mentioned this. He's wearing a shirt that says "Truck You."
Yep.
Classic. Definitely need to get one of those.
Oh yeah, pick one up right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm actually on the Amazon page for one right now.
All right, good. Get me one. And so he starts making very crude remarks about her being a lesbian. And
he says "free country," and then he proceeds to say "free cunt-ry."
Yeah,
like he's fuck this guy.
Yeah. He's not very witty. He probably thought that was like genius in his mind.
In his brain, he's high-fiving himself.
Yeah. Like, yes, you're so fucking cool, dude. And then he starts getting more crude about saying that she'll eat a particular, part of, that goes along with him saying that she's lesbian. And she turns and says, "I'll eat you." And he's like, "What? No, you won't."
Yeah. He's like hell you will, you miserable bitch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can't describe the feeling that this following scene gave me, because so basically Sarah turns at this guy. She's kind of been like hunched over the bar drinking, kind of talking softly, and she turns to him, and it's just a straight on shot of him or of her looking at him, and the same vice versa of him looking back at her, and we see her just straight face reach for her face, and like she kind of places it over she places her hand over her face, and I can't describe to you how the uneasy feeling that I got that just like took over my whole body
when she removes her face, when she opens it like a hinge door.
Yes. Yeah. Because when she does it, you kind of know what's about to happen, but it's one of those things that's so scary. I recently had a nightmare a couple months ago, that's about this elevator scene, and I won't describe to you guys my awful nightmare that I had, but it gave me a very similar feeling of like, it's something about like a body deforming like in front of you that that really freaked me out. But there's something about it that just really shook me to my core. But she removes her face, and in it we see this dark abysmal type area with some lightning. And what does the voice say?
It says, "Are you sure you want to fuck with this?"
Yeah. And there's this like in the dark area that is her face or whatever's in her body. There's this big evil grin, and then she closes her face and basically bites the guy's neck off.
Mm-hmm.
And so he falls down, and she then kind of snaps back into this character of Sarah Palmer. I would describe it as that, kind of.
Right.
Being the frail old lady that she is, and she screams like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" And one of the bartenders comes up, and he's like, "Well, what the hell happened?"
Yeah, she's like, "He just collapsed." And the bartender's like, "With half of his neck missing?"
Yeah. And he's like, "You sure you didn't have anything to do with this?" And like she's kind of acting in the way that like Leland did, where he's being innocent, but at the same time there's something like manipulative about how he's acting, like he has the upper hand on you. And she's like, accidents happen or something like that.
So, quite a mystery, huh?
Yeah, right. And so he's just kind of looking at her like, oh, like, all right.
Yeah.
So he's suspicious of her, but she's basically like, who's gonna believe you? Did I really bite this guy's neck off? So, and that's kind of where that scene ends off. And before we move on, something very key to note here is that when Coop is in the Black Lodge earlier in the series, Laura she removes her face the same way, except when she does it, it's a bright white light. Correct?
Yeah.
So what do you think about this whole Bob, Sarah, and Laura thing that's going on? What do you suspect is happening?
I can't say for sure. I don't know if a spirit, obviously something has inhabited Sarah Palmer, but we can't say for sure if it's the presence of Bob or what the hell happened.
Right. And what I would pose is, has this always been inside of her? Because as we know from episode 8 and what we assume is Laura's mom, the bug that comes from the mother experiment, this evilness that the Bob orb is also in, it seems as though one of those goes into what we think is Sarah Palmer, right?
Yeah.
And so that just got me thinking, like, you know, we've talked about before, like Sarah's always had this ability to see sort of this other world that that others can't, like with the white horse, and obviously she's very disturbed. Like I think some of, I don't know, oh geez, what's Donna, like, you know, when she's talking to Donna and stuff, but like anyway, some of Laura's friends had described that like her mom had like a darkness to her, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that just got me thinking, like, and obviously going back to episode 8, we see the Laura orb that they sent down to Earth, the woods, or sorry, not the woodsman, the fireman. And so I don't know, it makes me think about like that mythology of, has Sarah always been dark? Was it fate for her and Leland to be together? If he could be, because we think that Leland has been Bob since he was a kid, right? And so again, it's like, how long have they been evil? If Sarah is evil at all, or if this is just a new development. Right. That something's... So I don't know. But I do think it's significant that both Sarah and Laura remove their faces. And obviously we see that Sarah's evil. Laura is still a good spirit. I don't know. That's a bit of a tangent, but that's what I think.
No, I like it. That's what we need is the discussion.
Yeah. But again, like, I don't know, even seeing her, it just makes me think of, like, obviously with episode 8, and this kind of leads into my next point too, is just, we see how, what the series proves is, and what it removes from what the original series had, is some of the melodrama and the soap opera aspects that were in Twin Peaks. A lot of that's removed, and now we're seeing how significant the lore is, and how, and I don't know, just all the small things that happened that were like, oh, that's weird, I don't know why that happened in Twin Peaks. It all leads back to something. Right. It all makes sense. But anyway, it leads into my point of this, is we see, as every episode seems to end almost, it's, we go to the Roadhouse, we see like teens that are kind of like high school age, a little bit older obviously since they're in the Roadhouse, so 21-year-old plus kids.
Well, we don't know that for sure because Mike and Bobby would go there when they were in high school.
Oh, that's true. So maybe it isn't necessarily 21 and up. Yeah. So they could be in high school as well, right?
Right.
That's a good point. But anyway, we see a lot of their like melodrama and a lot of like the gossipy things, and like, not to negate the fact, like in this episode, they're talking about Billy, and we'll get into that here in a second. But anyway, how those have kind of like curved off each episode, and it's always been the small thing. I feel like whether this is intentional or not on Lynch's and Frost's part, that we just see how much they've reduced like that sort of aspect of the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we literally see it in just it's 2-minute scenes where the people are kind of gossiping, and then there's music, and that's how the episodes end. So a lot of that, it's nice to see because it shows that Twin Peaks hasn't really changed in a lot of ways. It's just the focus isn't on it anymore. You know what I mean? It's more about, again, the lore and how big picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, we see two women just having a conversation at the Roadhouse, and one says to the other, like, so were you the last person to, like, I don't know, people were saying you're like the last person to see Billy alive, right?
Well, just to see Billy, not alive, but just to see him.
Oh, okay.
No one's seen him dead, as far as we know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, certainly there's no implications of that. But anyway, she starts describing the situation where her and her mom, we find out her mom is Tina, who had been mentioned by Audrey and Charlie. And Tina's the one that Charlie's on the phone with, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Tina's daughter that's talking. And so she's saying that she saw Billy and Tina, her
and her mom were in the kitchen.
Right.
And they saw Billy leap over a 6-foot fence. And like kind of like creep into the house.
Yeah.
And his face is dripping with blood. And he runs into the kitchen for about 10 seconds and then sprints out, and that was the last they saw of him.
Yeah, like, well, there's blood gushing out of him. He like bangs his head on their sink, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at them with this weird look, and they were like, they just, I don't know, it didn't seem like Billy to them. And then, he runs off, and they never see him. Two important details of this, and this kind of goes back to one of my earlier points. One, it seems that she mentions that Tina and Billy were a thing, so her mom and Billy were a thing at some point, right?
Yeah.
And another part is she, twice as she's describing this to this girl, she mentions she doesn't remember if her uncle's there. And the more that she describes it, and going back to Gordon's dream, and then what's the other security guard's name with the
Freddy?
Strong hand? Freddy. When Freddy's describing this experience to James, it feels very dreamlike.
Yeah.
And the further that these people are describing these things, the more that they seem like that. And the same way that Tina's daughter is describing this, when you have a dream, you're trying to describe it, but you don't remember all the small details. So for her to not really remember if her uncle was there twice, if something weird like that happens, you remember every small detail. You remember if your uncle is there or not,
Right.
And so I don't know if that's necessarily like whether that debunks it being true that it actually happened, or if she just imagined it, but I think it just goes back to this huge theme in Twin Peaks that like and even going back to the quote that the woman says, Monica says to Gordon, we are like the dreamer that dreams and lives inside the dream, but who is the dreamer? In Twin Peaks, there's a very blurred line between reality and fantasy.
Right.
And so, I don't know, whether intentional or not, we get that with the story that Tina's describing, and it's just kind of left, it leaves you kind of shaking your head like, what is really happening? So, who knows? I think it's really interesting that, like, with 4 episodes, how many left? 4? Yeah.
Yeah.
We still don't know who Billy and Tina are. We don't know who any of these characters are, as far as I know.
Well, hold on. Let me pitch you this.
Yeah, okay.
We saw a guy with his face bleeding in this episode.
Could that be Billy?
It could it be Billy's doppelganger? Could they have seen Billy's doppelganger run in with his face bleeding, and the real Billy is somehow trapped in that body?
That could be. Man, that's a good theory, man. Because, yeah, Audrey obviously wants to go to the Roadhouse to see if Billy's there. He's not there because they're at the bar. They're at the Roadhouse and they're talking about him, asking where he is, right? The Tina's daughter and the other girl. So, yeah, obviously he's not there. So maybe he did get arrested.
Yeah,
got him in a holding cell. Yeah, because she was saying he was bleeding out of his mouth, right, and like his face.
Yeah.
So, whoa. Good catch, man. That very well could be. This is what I'm talking about, dude. We're finally posing some good theories. At first, it was like a joke. You're like, "Here's a shitty fan theory," but I think you got some valid claims going on.
Yeah, dude.
Well, yeah, and then we end the episode with a performance, and I know it's one that you were very keen on.
Yeah,
right? You were a big fan.
this was not my favorite performance, and not to say the music was awful. It was just I felt like she was overdoing her movements, and I hated it.
Yeah,
she was like flopping around on stage. I was like, "Fucking cut it out."
And the episode ended with a nice tribute to David Bowie,
right? In memory of David Bowie. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, after seeing that, do you think he'll appear in the series in present day of, an older Philip Jeffries?
That's a good question. Maybe not.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. I mean, we've heard that Philip Jeffries has a definite presence in the series, but he's already had a presence without being present. So
yeah.
We'll have to wait to find out, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me likes to believe that. I don't know. Not that I like to believe it, but I don't know. I don't think that we'll see him. I feel like that was kind of their way of really. And it's not to say it's only with him, because one of the best things about this series is David Lynch and Mark Frost, they handled like these characters that, like, the log lady passed away, that actress, and the actor that plays Albert passed away, and obviously the man who played Bob and Major Briggs had all passed before even filming long ago. And I don't know, they make it a point to, it adds to the backstory of Twin Peaks, but they show how significant those characters were, you know what I mean, and how important they were, and it just kind of like further establishes their legacy, that they shouldn't be forgotten even after they were gone. And so we've seen that with Philip Jeffries too. Obviously, him being one of the first arresting officers with the Blue Rose. But it just, I don't know, it makes me think that, with seeing that Fire Walk With Me flashback, and then getting the, in memory of David Bowie at the end of the episode, maybe this is the introduction to seeing David Bowie, but I have a feeling that he probably didn't film anything.
Yeah, right.
But that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, any closing thoughts here, Cheeb? Well, Steven?
Man, oh man. I don't know. I don't know what the next episode's going to bring. If we kind of it's so hard to figure out the pacing of the show,
Right.
But it does seem like oftentimes we're introduced with a plot point, and then the next episode skips over it, and then the following episode kind of addresses it or furthers it along. So if we, believe that to be true, or even roughly true, I think we'll probably see Tim Roth and Jennifer Jason Leigh arrive in Vegas.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a confrontation there between them and the Mitchum brothers, or Dougie.
Or maybe the Fusco trio.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe all of them.
Yeah. Hopefully not Badland Bud. I hope Badland Bud
gets out all right.
Makes it through. Yeah.
Me too.
I don't know. I have a feeling though that we're gonna be seeing some bloodshed.
Yeah.
Sometime soon.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not on Big Ed's part. Am I right?
Oh man, we can only hope Big Ed finds love with Norma, and she leaves that fuck boy that she's with.
Yeah.
But time will tell. We'll find out.
Guess
probably
so.
not, but
Yeah,
hopefully.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, hey, thanks again for listening, guys. Once again, if you liked it, hit us with a thumbs up. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If we missed anything, let us know. As always, thank you for listening, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate all the feedback and everything that we've been getting. So
definitely, and we will talk to you next week.
See you later. I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna miss you. Bye.